Hi, Mama Migraine. Woo, Mama Migraine. I hope you don't have a migraine right now. Thank you for joining. Mil Memi, Pei Nu, uh, Metta Lo Mian, I think. Alicia chacharoo. Wow. Arturo Driver. Hi, good morning, everybody. It's Friday. Our lovely Jackie. Hi, Maria. Hi, our lovely Jackie. GO0172. Lazy 26 from San Diego, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's Friday, it's President's Day weekend, it's Valentine's Day weekend. Wow, Valentine's Day weekend. So much going on in our world, so much going on in Washington, so much going on here in California, so much going on in everybody's homes. Hi, Abby. Hi, Bridget Speaks. Hi, Maria. I'm Bridget from Los Angeles. Hi. Happy Valentine's Day. Wow, everybody, are you writing more books? I'm always thinking of writing more books. I just started a book imprint. It's called The Open Field. It's at Penguin, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about publishing other voices who rise above the noise, whose mission is also to make life better, to move humanity forward. So I'm doing that right now, and but I'm always thinking of another book to write. I've always got something that I'm writing on my desk. So good morning from Colorado. Hi, Lori Jensen, 2020. Nice to see you. Good morning, everybody. I'm super excited today to talk to Mark Groves about love. I'm a big student of love. I've been good at it, bad at it. I've made a lot of mistakes in it, but I've also think done it well. And I think we're all students of love, and I think everybody's looking for love. And I've noticed and learned over the years that sometimes, or very often, love is right in front of us. And since it doesn't match the movie, or it doesn't match that book, or it doesn't match your vision, you sometimes miss it. So this weekend, I hope whether you're in a relationship or not, you notice all the love that's around you. I always notice my son brings me a cup of coffee. My daughter brings me a muffin. My other daughter brought me last night a little Valentine's Day basket with popcorn because I'm a popcorn fanatic. So there's so many different ways to express your love for somebody else, and not just on this weekend. But we're going to talk to Mark Groves because I really like the way he approaches relationships. I love the advice he gives, and he's really cool, and he's really I think really smart. There he is. Create the Love, Mark Groves. Actually listen to him and learn a lot from him. He's much younger than me, but he's really wise. And I thought it'd be great to talk to him. Hi, Mark.
Hi, it's good to be here.
How are we?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm great. I was just singing your praises on this Valentine's Day weekend because I've learned a lot about love from you. You give it straight. And I love that that obviously you're a man and you're giving it kind of very brutally honest, which I think is really great to your community. And you talk about all kinds of things. I saw the other day you talking to people saying, I know many of you come here for love, but I want to talk about other things as well. And if you don't like it, go.
Yeah, I teach boundaries, so I better have some,
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great thing. Boundaries. I didn't grow up hearing about boundaries. And I think so many people like my age, or younger, this whole kind of open conversation about what love is and what isn't is really new, right?
Yeah.
Love languages wasn't a thing. Boundaries wasn't a thing. Taking relationship 101 wasn't a thing. So on this Valentine's Day weekend, Mark, what do you find people are looking for, hoping for when they come to your community?
It's a bit of a mixture. I think it's one, if they're alone. Valentine's Day and I think people need to understand sort of the history of Valentine's Day. It's not just something that appeared through Mother Nature. We're going to have this day where we celebrate love and buy cards. I mean, it was produced by the industries.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think when we start to measure our worth based on our relationship status, which I think most of us do, and I think that's the challenge most of us have, is who am I without this relationship? And
yeah.
Valentine's Day brings up a lot of challenges for people who are single because they think, I'm not enough, I don't have anyone to celebrate with. And it's so important to feel the pain of that because someone has taught you that there's some sort of validation you get by being in partnership, which is not to dismiss the beauty and the love and the things that come from partnership. But I always ask people, like, do you place your worth in it? Because if you place your worth in your relationship status, you likely will never have conversations that might break your relationship status. And those are the very conversations you need to have to deepen your relationship and to really experience, you know, a new type of relationship, not like the ones we tended to observe through history, through Disney, through all that kind of stuff.
So what is your advice to people who are alone on this Valentine's Day? And there are millions and millions of them, and they see everybody celebrating, they see the commercialization of it, and you say it's important to feel the pain of it or the grief of it, but you know, you're sitting then with pain and grief on Valentine's Day.
Right. Like, eat chocolate and be sad. That's not what I'm saying, but more so to explore why you have associated that pain and aloneness. You know, like the difference between aloneness and loneliness is really this belief that someone else or something else is going to give me what I seek. As where aloneness is learning how to be comfortable with oneself, learning to have one's own back. You know, it's kind of like when you're single and you start to get your poop in a group, you start to get everything figured out. And then you enter a relationship again and you're like, I thought I had that figured out. And you realize it's only through relationship that you start to actually really heal things. So yeah, it's one, explore where do you place your worth? And if you place it in relationship, look into that. But the other part is you're saying, you know, like, redefine what the day means for you. If you're single, you know, obviously due to protocols and safety, hang out with friends, do a Zoom hangout. I think a lot of us are zoomed out. So maybe go out for a walk, go do your social distance stuff, but really start to make it where it's a celebration of aloneness. I think we get so lost in this like shame-based aloneness. Yeah. And it's really something that could be celebrated.
Yeah, I think that that is so true. Shame-based aloneness. Do you find, Mark, that the people, because you have so many people in your community, are they all alone, do you find? Are they working through relationships? Is there a tremendous desire of people that you see now who want to say, like, I want to understand myself through relationship. I now see that there are these tools out there. There are these courses. There are these people who really teach relationship 101, and I want to learn.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it at the very beginning when you said, like, relationships are so different. Like, what we want from a relationship, what we can bring to a relationship is totally changed. And, you know, I think we see it throughout every sort of aspect of human nature, human consciousness, is we're asking questions we've never asked. We're challenging things we've never challenged. And that has so much to do with the constructs of relationship, because relationships, as the marriage historian Stephanie Coontz talks about, is historically marriage really came from the need to get more in-laws. And, you know, she sort of chuckles at that. And I think that is kind of funny when you think about it from that context. So what we now seek from relationship, I mean, is growth. Like, who saw back in the day that their partner's feedback was an invitation to their own evolution? I mean, you look at the sort of breadwinner, nuclear family system, which wasn't actually even very common, but we've been sort of sold this story. It wasn't to empower both partners. There was very much a power inequity in relationship. And now we're like, hey, I want to meet someone head on. I think I do. But then when I do, I'm not really sure. And I think you're right. We're curious. We want to grow. And I feel like everyone who follows your work, my work, your Sunday paper, you know, there are people who want to learn about how to relate better.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about things, as I say to my daughters, I have all four of my kids are in their 20s. You know, this talk about attachment, love language, trauma, informed, boundaries. It was nowhere when I was growing up. Right?
Same with me. Yeah.
It's like, and so all of a sudden people are speaking in certain generations a completely different language than other generations. So do you find that you have to tailor your work to generations or to decades?
No, I find like there's like once you get to like a certain age, there's definitely a drop off of who's sort of interested. But I don't.
Really? I don't believe that. Isn't everybody always interested?
Well, I think we're interested, but I mean, maybe it's the access to Instagram, desire to have those conversations. Like, I've ran a relationship workshop for a really big leadership company where most of the leaders, because of the age group, it was all above 50. And, you know, most of the leaders were men and their partners, female. And it was really interesting to observe the discomfort of, like, I did an eye gazing exercise at the very start. And it was just watching these male CEOs do eye gazing with their partner. And, you know, you could see where they were like, who is this guy and why did we bring him in? That was kind of the, but it was cool. You know, it was
Yeah.
really neat to, because if no one's having those conversations with older generations,
Yeah.
then who, like, really, I find that there's a whole generations that are imprisoned by the rules they were taught about emotionality and connection.
Yeah.
And so, like, as children, you know, I think we often don't see our parents as the children of parents, and that really humanizes them. And, you know, if no one ever spoke to them with, like, what do you feel? What do you hide? What do you find that you most wanted to do with your life? What do you regret? What do you look forward to? You know, I think those are questions we dodge, and if we dodge contracts.
I love that that you're saying that there are so many people who are trapped in what they may have been taught in the way that they grew up. I love that exercise. So if you're an adult kid this weekend, maybe that's a really nice thing to talk to your parents about, or if you have a parent who is alone, ask them these questions that Mark is talking about, perhaps, like, how do you feel? How were you loved? Did you feel loved? These kinds of really basic questions that perhaps nobody asked them before, right?
Yeah, you know, I got this cool journal from, it was like from a Barnes and Noble that was questions to get to know your mom and questions to get to know your dad. And
Ah,
there were things in dad or mom or even partnership, because it wasn't gendered, but it was really interesting. And I brought it to, I don't know, am I cutting out? Can you hear me?
you are a little bit. You are a little bit.
I brought it to Christmas dinner, and I was sitting down with them asking all the questions, and you could sort of see the vulnerability within them. But, you know, it was really cool to be able to witness things and ask things that I'd never taken the time to sit down and really get curious about.
Yeah, I think that you are fade. You're
Am I?
dissolving. You're not. Your words aren't fading. Your image is fading.
Here, let me
but,
move to a
but your
better.
words are really strong. But I think that that's such a beautiful thing. If you find yourself alone this weekend, also to think about other ways to express love, to notice love. And I love that idea of what the journal was talking to Mark about how to have a conversation about love with people you're not even in a relationship with, because this weekend kind of celebrates one kind of love, right? What
Yes.
And there are so many different forms of love, and that's really something I think we can bring to the table. We don't have to buy what marketers tell us love is.
Well, just that line alone, we don't have to buy it. To not participate it in the way we're taught, which is true of relationship too. Like, if people were taught not to use their voice, not to have emotionality, men are taught that. You know,
Yeah.
women are taught not to use their power and have a voice. To do the opposite is to reclaim oneself, to not participate in the system. And it's sort of like, you know, that, how do you change the world? You change yourself. That's just like not allowing the day of Valentine's Day to decide how you feel about yourself is an act of rebellion. It's also the disconnecting from a collective codependency. You know, codependency is also the, I'm going to dance for you. I want you to like me. I'm going to perform so that you approve. To
Right.
go against what you're taught is to unhook from codependency, really.
I love that. That also wasn't really a thing when I was growing up,
Right?
codependency. And definitely self-love was not a thing for my generation. I always think if I utter that, my mother might come down from heaven and whack me up the head. But
They would have called it selfish. I think
yeah,
that was the term.
you've also been, which I think is great, very vocal on your own Instagram about breaking up in your own relationship, taking time to really be alone, and then finding your way back. Now that's
Yeah.
something that a lot of people want to do, right? They feel like, I want to find my way back. Is that kind of delusional thinking? Is that a good thing to do if you have somebody that you don't have closure with, or somebody that you think like that wasn't meant to break up?
Yeah, you know, I think often if your hope isn't attached to any sort of, if hope is first off attached to someone else's actions, it can't live there, because you're not in charge of your own life as soon as you put hope in, like, maybe they'll come back, maybe they'll change. we have to immediately take our power back from that space. And I think so many of us learn to place hope in people outside of us from our childhoods. Like, I hope my mom will show up. I hope my dad will, whatever it might be. And so in our breakup, there was very much like the acknowledgement and the acceptance that the relationship had ended. Like, it had to, like, you know, I very much, both of us moved forward, you know, and if you don't have closure, I think it's beautiful to desire a relationship back with someone. But I think the important caveat of language is usually we say like, hey, how do I get back together, right? That's usually, I've gotten a lot of those questions since people have seen our reuniting. And I think it's the wrong question to ask. It's, how do I meet them moving forward? Like, if I'm in my growth path and I'm actually changing and they're changing too, it won't matter who's on the path. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're looking for, well, if you're looking for something in partnership, and if you're doing that and you're actually living your life as if you will only accept that bar which you set yourself, then when that person shows up in front of you, you'll be so ready for them that it won't matter what their name is. Because you'll be so focused on your own growth and expansion and your standards. So when we finally reunited to have a conversation of like, hey, where are we at? How do we feel? We both just felt this, you know, sort of universal, we had met up before and been like, no, this isn't going to work. And when we had a conversation after about 8 months, we were like, okay, we're both in different places. We've unhooked from our sort of former codependent patterns. Let's see how this goes. And it's gone well.
So that's, I'm happy for you. That's
Thank
great.
you.
So that's kind of what I think Mark is talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong. I want to mirror that back. It's really having the courage, first and foremost, to say, this isn't working, the relationship as, and I believe enough in myself that I'm going to go on my path and not placing, as you said, you're hoping that that person will then say, oh, your path is cool, let me catch up to it. But believing in yourself enough. And I think that's really kind of seems to me the basis of your work is believe in yourself enough, have your own self-worth, get your own boundaries, clean up your own house, get your own language in shape. And then if someone, old, new, or whatever, shows up and they're on the same path as you, that's a path of growth, a path of love, a path of acceptance and forgiveness, etc., then look at it anew, right?
That's exactly it. That if you're still trying to behave in a way that will get them back, then you're still codependent. You're still being manipulative. You're still not showing up as your authentic self. You're still trying to get something. You know, it's like, I want to do my personal growth work for myself always first. Because if I ever do my growth to get someone back, if I don't get them back, I might throw my growth away. Because I'm doing it on a condition. And yes, it's exactly that. Like, move forward as if you're ready to let them go. And that's always what creates the most power. That's the most attractive thing, is when someone's dating and they're like, they have a boundary. Boundaries are the hottest thing in the world. You know, like, as soon as someone says, I don't really appreciate that, we're like, whoa, hey, I like this person, because we can trust them.
I love that. Boundaries are the hottest thing in the world.
They really are. They're so sexy.
They're so sexy. So remember that out there this weekend. Like, boundaries are hot. Boundaries are sexy. If you don't know what boundaries are, Mark has a course on boundaries. If you did not grow up with boundaries, and many people didn't, if you struggle with boundaries, Mark has a course on, you had a whole thing on boundaries, right? Because for many people, boundaries, they don't even know what they are. And I want to ask you this. So many people today, particularly in their 20s and 30s, I hear they have you know, a life coach, an executive coach, a trainer, all this sort of stuff. And I asked them, well, do you have a relationship coach? Do you have a spiritual advisor? Do you have someone who helps you in your relationship? And they're like, no. What?
Like, why would I need that?
Why do I need that? So do you find that people want that, or is that still something that they feel like, I don't want to say I have that? When I tried to tell my kids, your relationship, if you tend to that, right, that's going to be way more important than your job, because you can get fired from your job will come, all of these things, but kind of prioritizing your relationship and then understanding that it's going to change by the decade, by the year, really.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so key, that we haven't normalized, which is, you know, when people get married, the sort of former vows were till death do us part. I mean, honor and obey, that's another one people want to throw out the window. But, you know, it's, as we move forward relationally, we forget that we're going to change. We know we're going to change, right? Like, we have that understanding, like, why is there no space for me to change? but we very much want people to stay static because then we have certainty, we have safety. And we don't realize that, you know, Dr. Alexandra Salmon has this great post that she wrote where, you know, a marriage with one person will be many marriages. A relationship with one person will be many relationships, because you will change, they will change, and the container of the relationship itself must change. And so, like, the things you want at 19 are very different than the things you want at 45. And can the relationship hold the changing of ourselves? And, you know, I think that's such a key of, as you were saying, like, we don't normalize relational wellness and relational health. We don't normalize emotional health. Not till now, till like now we're in a pandemic and we're for sure in the greatest mental health crisis we've ever seen. And now we're like, oh, well, we better have these conversations. But the evidence shows, like, relationally, people see a therapist far too late.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, like LeBron James is, you know, this might cause an uproar on your thing, but he's for sure one of the best basketball players in the world. I was going to say the best, but you know, I'm sure it caused some uproar. And he still has a coach. And so, you know, it's the same idea as most of us see a therapist or a coach when we need to because things are wrong. We should actually see or do that work. It doesn't have to be with a coach or a therapist. It could be doing courses, reading books, learning. But that we're doing that to keep things great and make things better. And we have such a culture of how we deal with medicine is reactive, how we deal with mental health and emotional challenges is reactive. And you know, now we're in preventative health, we're in holistic health. Yeah. Most of us never thought, like, could you imagine 30 years ago if someone said, do you have a spiritual advisor? People would be like, are you smoking weed? You know, like there's more receptivity to that. Even the idea that there's a spiritual aspect to ourselves, a spiritual soul-based relationship. I mean, I think we're in the best times because at least these conversations are happening because
I love that. Relational wellness. Let me ask you, so I talk to a lot of women who say that they struggle to get their husbands or their partners to therapy or to be in this conversation. How do you encourage men to get involved in relational wellness?
Yeah, you know, I feel it's such a layered thing because one, there's the socialization that, you know, like the very thing that relationships require of men most is their emotionality, their emotional fluency, their ability to hold space, you know. But the very thing the world severs men from is those things. Yeah. So masculinity in and of itself, for men to turn towards emotional relational health, is an act of rebellion against the definition of masculinity, which I think is really great because that's a reclamation and a changing of it, realizing that your emotionality has actually zero to do with your masculinity, but we seem to have enmeshed these two things. So one, it's the initiative of starting to see, like, when you look at the research, by the time, and I'm speaking heteronormatively, by the time a woman says, hey, things aren't great, I'm not, this relationship, we need to do something, it's about 2 years till they actually file for divorce. Women file more divorce than men, and men and women in relationship, women turn towards friends the majority of the time for emotional support. Men turn towards their partners for emotional support the majority of the time. So men, when they lose their relationship, lose their emotional support network often. And so I don't think we as men often recognize when our partner says, hey, I feel disconnected, we often we can't face that not enoughness because the world hasn't prepared us for that. And what that ends up doing, if we're not mindful of it, is our relationship ends up falling away, and then we want to fight for it. And again, it's that reactive thing rather than that proactive thing. And I mean, this comes back to a lot of evolution because men are not motivated to understand the nuances of emotion because they're the dominant group. So there's no evolutionary motivation to do that, as where, you know, Harriet Lerner talks about this, how the reason that women seek emotional information is because they needed to understand the nuances of aggression and anger and be able to make it, because they could possibly die at the hands of that type of behavior. And I think this really shows that as men, we have to start to, I mean, as white males, but as males especially too, we have to recognize our privilege of being like, wow, like for me to dive into my emotionality is actually what births connection. But in doing that, I mean, you got to eat humble pie, and humble pie doesn't taste good. And I would certainly didn't take feedback well from my partners when I was in my 20s. But now I look at my partner and she gives me feedback and I'm like, all she wants is for me to be better. And her feedback to me is actually, she sees me better than anybody. And that is not normalized in relationship, to see our partner's feedback as actually an invitation to my evolution as a human, as a man. And I hope, and I certainly see it, because, you know, about 20% of my followers are male. And they're super engaged and they super care. There's so much desire and passion. And I'm part of a group of 10 men, and we are having conversations like this every week. And so I've
Wow.
seen a big shift. Now, we talked earlier about the generational difference, and I think there's a huge generational difference in terms of, like, once you get sort of above 50, the amount of access there was to emotionality and vulnerability for men in those age groups. I mean, they were ultimately severed and shamed from having it. So it's a big, I think there needs to be compassion for what you're asking someone to do when you're saying, read this book, go to therapy. Instead, because often we think like, well, they won't go to therapy, so end the relationship, or they don't want to. It's like, what are you afraid of finding at therapy? Why don't you want to go? Is there another modality that you'd like? Would you like to see a coach? Do you have interest in fixing this relationship? Do you want to shift things? And if they don't, I
Yeah.
mean, there's not a lot you can do.
Right there, that's where the boundary comes in. But I like the idea. I love that you're in a men's group. I have a lot of guy friends who are in men's groups, and you often associate that. Oftentimes, these groups with AA or NA, those were kind of a lot of groups started. But I've heard other younger men say they're in a spiritual men's group, or having men, you know, they formed their own men's group for men to hold them accountable, or couples started men's groups. So I think kind of, if you are in a relationship, right, encouraging the man in your life or your partner to develop their own group where they can work some of these things out. But once again, that having these conversations is a sign of strength and vulnerability, and reframing that. Very often our tone and how we frame these conversations needs to catch up, right? We need to, as mothers, as wives, as partners, right? We have to learn a better kind of art form of communication.
Yeah, that's because so much of the dance, right? It's a dance between the two of us. And if we always have the same dance, only one person has to change it. And so if we are inviting therapy through, like, we need to go to goddamn therapy, you know, that's probably not gonna, or like, you need to go to therapy is often how we start it, or you need to fix your shit, or you need to figure your stuff out. And right away, that is going to induce tons of shame, because you're using you. It's critical language. You're not mindful. If you say, like, in my experience, when we have a conversation, things often break down. I'd like to better understand you and understand us. Like, what an invitation that is. That's a total shift. And I think as relationally, we need to learn how to turn shoulder to shoulder towards problems, and not often one person feels like the problem. And that often happens, like with intimacy issues, you see a similar thing, as opposed to whatever things are in between me and them, me and the other person, it's an us challenge. And, you know, I saw a question that said, well, what happens if they don't want to change?
Yeah.
Well, part of our own growing up is to not continue to try to get people to change. That's the unhooking from codependency. Yeah. I find that most couples stay in a pattern where one person's not wanting to do the work and the other one's trying to do the work for two. And the actual growing up is to stop taking up the space the other person needs to step into. So that's saying, I'm no longer going to hide books under your pillow or by accident put podcasts on while we're driving, you know, like.
But I think that's so interesting, because that comes back to your boundaries are hot, boundaries are sexy. But I see so many women, particularly young women who are in their 30s, early 30s, who are so afraid to leave because they don't want to be alone. And what we say as a society, or what women think society says about them as being alone, is really this underlying thing of people will accept things they don't want to accept because the fear of being alone, or the fear of not being chosen, the fear of not being special trumps everything.
Yeah, and see, that is exactly where that realizing that you will be far more alone in a relationship you fear being yourself to keep, because you are alone. You're not within your own body. You have to leave your own soul to be in a relationship that requires your self-abandonment. You know, I think we forget that anything that creates belonging at the cost of self is not worth it. It usually leads to inflammation. I mean, it always leads to inflammation, illness, chronic disease, what is the term? I forget. But anyways, the autoimmune, it leads to gut issues. It leads to all these things. And, you know, I think the ultimate thing all of us are constantly trying to figure out is, how do I be in a relationship and not lose who I am? Most of us are in the relationship at the cost of self, or keeping a self at the cost of relationship. Like, we don't know how to do both. And that's such a dance to learn.
Yeah, there's people in here saying I was married 25 years and I was invisible. So I think that that's really kind of on this weekend, right? If you're in a loving, communicative relationship, bravo, great. And, you know, that's fantastic, because it said there's nothing better than love. But if you're alone, if you find yourself alone, kind of don't beat yourself up about that, right? And we have a story playing in our head about what society says about us if we're alone. And that's an old tape, is my friend to say. Eject that tape, because it's not accurate. Eject the tape that being alone is a sad thing. Being alone means you're not lovable. Being alone means you're not worthy. So on Valentine's Day, if you find yourself alone, probably you're going to do something on Valentine's Day for people, right? I'm sure. Aren't you?
Yeah, so on Valentine's Day, I have an app called Mind that I co-founded with a bunch of other creators. And we have a whole Valentine's Day series. So people can just go to download Mind, MINED.com. It's free. And there's a whole day series. And on Instagram, it's at Do You Mind, and it's MINED.com.
At Do You Mind. And then you're going to keep people company on Valentine's Day?
Yeah, so they just sign up for the app, and the app's free. And then they have a schedule. It's like Peloton for mental health. It's something we just started building. It's like the world's first emotional network. That's what
oh my
it is.
God,
Yeah.
That's great. When did that happen?
We just sort of soft launched it about a month ago, because we were about a month and a half ago, just this real desire to like finally be like, where's an app that people can go learn about these things, and also you know, that makes you feel better when you go to it, that you actually like get more wellness, more worth. And I think that's a big step.
Okay, repeat it again one more time, Mark. So if you find yourself alone this Valentine's Day, or if you're coming out of a relationship, or if you want a relationship, if you want to grow in your emotional wellness, go to at
Do You Mind is the Instagram, and it's MINED. And if you want to download it, it's for both Android and Apple. It's download Mind, MINED.com.
Okay, and we'll link to that in the Sunday paper. We'll recommend
that.
That's so great. Oh, I'm so proud of you. That's
Thank you. Yeah, we're super pumped about it. I feel like it was just time. I'm like, you know, we're in that time. We made it for free right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to have like paid aspects, but all the general knowledge will be free.
That's
and
so
still
great.
is. There's tons of content on there. People can go learn about their family systems, codependency, how to bring more joy into their life. I have one on dating. I have one on recovering from breakup. I mean, there's tons of stuff.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. I'm going to go download that right away. I'm going to learn all about it. I'm going to tell my 4 adult children to look at it. They're not kids anymore. They're adult children, but they're all in relationship, right? They're in relationship with friends. They're in relationship with parents. They're in relationship with girlfriends, boyfriends. All of these different kinds of relationships all require kind of emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah, you know, what you're saying, it reminds me of, there's this really interesting study called the Harvard Men's Study. It's now the Harvard Wellbeing Study. Shows you where it was born.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think it's just speaks to people of like how important your relational health is, and how important it is you do the work to figure it out. Yeah. Because it studied Harvard graduates and compared it to people from poor areas of Boston to understand if socioeconomic status made any influence. And they followed them. It's the longest running study on well-being. It now includes the next generation. It includes the women too now, about time. And it showed that your greatest predictor of your health at 80 was the quality of your relationships at age 50. And that actually wasn't just romantic, it was friendship. So you didn't have to be in a romantic relationship. And somehow those it was more predictive than your cholesterol, your blood pressure. And it somehow had a protective mechanism from like pain and neurological decline, like such powerful things that we all know that when you are in a loving, safe relationship, your body goes into rest and digest. You feel like you have people you can depend on. And I think that's more important now than ever.
And the key there is that not all those relationships have to be romantic, right? So
No,
if you find
no.
yourself, as I say, this weekend feeling kind of a little blue, why don't you go over to Mark's new app? There's a lot of content there that can keep you company. But remember, the best company is yourself, because the words you use to encourage yourself forward are really critical, because the brain doesn't distinguish, right? If you wake up and say, you suck, you're alone, you're a disaster, it takes
Yeah,
it in, right? And if you wake
right.
up and say, you know, read the Derek Walcott poem, Love After Love. There's a lot out there that can encourage you forward and help you. So, Mark, I want to thank you so much for spending Friday with us, getting us
Thank you for
going,
having me.
kicking us off into this weekend, and reminding us that the most important relationship, love, first begins with us, and then how we can put it out into the world. And congratulations on your app. We'll stay in constant communication, because I think this kind of emotional wellness is so important. No matter, you know, if you're a political figure, it's important, right?
100%.
How we model our tone and our love language. This is not just about intimate relationships. This is
No.
about the world we're creating and living in. So thank you for leading the way.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, honestly, from my the deepest places of just saying thanks for your support. Always, really appreciate
Always.
it.
And I'm happy you're happy.
Thank you so much, and have a beautiful weekend.
You too, you too. That's Mark Rose. I think that app he's talking about is spectacular. We'll put that conversation up in the Sunday paper. This Sunday, we'll link to his new app, which sounds really great. And I want to wish all of you a happy Valentine's Day, a happy President's Day. And if you're not where you want to be on the love train, do not despair, and open your eyes, because love is all around us. And most important, love is within you. It's a God-given gift to you. You are love. Don't forget that. And don't wait for somebody to tell you that you are that. You are love. You are loved, and you will find love. Might not be the stuff of movies, but it's real. So have a great weekend, and thanks so much for joining us. Bye-bye. Whoop, trying to end.